Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Manifesting Muslimah Ramadan series, Aligning with Allah. In yesterday's episode, I spoke about what outsourcing your relationship with Allah means and how many of us are doing it. And today I want to share some of the signs or side effects, I suppose you're going to call it, of what it actually means for you in an everyday sense when your relationship with Allah has been mainly outsourced to other people. So what that can look like for you as a religious practicing Muslim today. One thing that I forgot to mention in yesterday's episode, but I was like, I'm not going to go back and re-record that whole episode, so I'm just going to share it today, is about reverts or converts. So people who have not been raised with Islam, because many people might be tempted to think that, well, they chose Islam, so they did their studies and they most likely read the Quran or parts of the Quran or whatever they may have done before they decided to convert to Islam. But it still kind of applies also to a lot of converts as well, that at some point or another, when you start sort of seeking information, that you may also be tempted to be like, I'm going to ask other people for their opinion, or I'm going to ask other people for about their knowledge, and in that way, again, potentially outsourcing a lot of the responsibility of curating the relationship with Allah based on, again, this would usually be like scholars or imams and stuff like that, but also potentially like a really good friend who's a Muslim. And so if you're a convert and you're like, oh, well, actually, I asked my really good friend because I thought that they were really good Muslims. And so they kind of explained to me who Allah is, and I kind of just ran with that. So it also is, converts kind of also have the same thing, but it may just happen a little bit later on in life, even if they have done a lot of studying around Islam and stuff like that. So I really just needed to point that out before I continue with today's episode, because I remembered that I didn't actually speak into that in yesterday's episode. Okay, so today's episode, some of the signs or side effects of what an outsourced relationship with Allah can look like for you today. So not having this intimate relationship with Allah, having a relationship with Allah that is built on everybody else's opinions and experiences, perspectives, so on and so forth, can have a huge side effect on how we now practice as Muslims, how we approach Allah, or even how we don't approach Allah. And unfortunately, as a coach, I see this so often. I see the manifestation of this weakened relationship, this outsourced relationship manifests itself in so many different ways. And it's not good. That's why we're here, right? It's not good. So one of the massive ways that it kind of manifests itself is that it kind of manifests itself as guilt or shame. There's a lot of guilt around the way that you approach Allah. There's a lot of shame in the way that you approach Allah. This is usually more applied to people who are raised within Islam, because this is, I'm so sorry to say it, but I'm just going to say it's a way of controlling people. Oh my God, I can't believe it. I'm not going to go into that whole thing. So because that's a whole other Ramadan series perhaps in and of itself. But parents actually use that. Yeah, I know. They might not know how damaging it actually is for a person growing up, but it's kind of a thing. And if it's not directly your parents, maybe it's the society that you grew up in. Maybe it's your local imam who used guilt and shame and having this relationship of guilt and shame with Allah to try and control you to do the things, and oh my God, I can't, because I feel like I really want to explain, but I'm not going to go into it because that's not what we're here for. But the point is that if you have a lot of guilt and shame around your relationship with Allah, that every time you're approaching Allah, every time you come to Salah, every time you're coming into a duha, the guilt of sitting down and having this conversation with Allah, because who am I to ask Allah for more, or who am I to complain to Allah, or who am I to this, that and the other, or even ask for more because what I've done in the past, I have so much shame, I'm carrying all this shame, Allah knows that I'm a bad person, I'm so sinful, this, that and the other. And that is what your major feelings around this relationship with Allah is based on. Usually that comes from a lot of other people's opinions and trying to get you to Oh, there's a Danish sentence, magerat. Yeah, I know that's horrible language. I'm sorry. I'm Danish. I'm allowed to say these things. I can be racist against my own people. But how would you say that in English? To fall in line, to fall in line. And this is, it's not, is that the things that I want to talk about when I talk about Islam? No, but it exists. It exists. And if we can't get somebody to do something because they want to do it right then and there, we can use things like guilt and shame to make people do the things. And so sometimes that's infused in the way that we understand and we approach Allah later on in life. And it's really a shame that it can have this effect on many of us, and it really truly does. And I see this specifically also for a lot of women more than men, because it is a tactic that is used more towards women than men. Again, a whole other conversation that I'm not going to get into right now. And if you want it, then remind me and we can do it perhaps after Ramadan, inshallah, and talk about that in and of itself. But that is how this outsourced relationship with Allah can manifest in your life, that your whole relationship with Allah is pretty much just based off of guilt and shame. So if that is something that you can recognize, then perhaps you've done a lot of outsourcing of your relationship and understanding with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Another way that it can manifest in your life is that your du'as are very shallow. Your du'as are, I call it pageant du'as. Some people don't like that I call it pageant du'as, but I'm not going to change it because it speaks exactly to what it is I'm trying to say is, we come to the dua and we say what we think Allah wants to hear. So we'll say, world peace and heaven for my friend, and forgive the person who did wrong, even though I still carry a lot of hate and resentment to them. I'm still going to ask for the forgiveness for them because I feel like that's what you want to hear. You want to hear me being a bigger person. Thank you for all of the things. Don't give me more because I'm already grateful, even though secretly I really, really want more, and blah, 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 blah. Where we come to the dua and it's so shallow, it's such a pageant dua, was like, please and well peace, thank you, like I like to think I'm funny, okay? I make myself laugh, but the point is that we're entering the dua with, there's no depth. And whenever we approach the depth, whenever we feel like, okay, today I'm going to say the things and I'm going to have the conversations with Allah, we feel, again, guilt and shame, but we also feel a lot of fear. We feel like Allah now hates us. Allah is going to judge us for it. He's going to think that we are greedy, that we want too much from him, that like, who do you think you are mentality. Like that's how we think Allah's going to look at us when we go beyond this pageant dua. So we don't do it. We stop ourselves. We restrict the dua because we don't feel like we are allowed to have this deep, meaningful, honest, authentic conversation with Allah without Allah being like, yeah, no, everybody but you. Do you know what I mean? That's a horrible, horrible way of approaching Allah. And what a horrible and sad relationship that is when we actually can have the very opposite of that, where there's so much trust and nurture and compassion in that relationship from Allah to us. Another way that the relationship, when we've outsourced it, can show up and manifest in our lives is that our connection with Allah feels weak. It feels very distant. It feels very far away. Allah doesn't feel close to us. Allah feels far away. And it is very much almost like this thing of when we're children, this understanding of like heaven is above and hell is below. And so God is up in heaven, so he must be up there somewhere. When in fact, Allah is absolutely everywhere, right? If he is closer to us than our own jugular veins, as he says himself, then of course Allah is not sitting somewhere above us looking at us. He is with us all the time. But if our understanding of Allah is a little bit sort of at an arm's length, and it becomes a bit of an arm's length because we don't take the time to bring him in. We don't take the time to accept that he is actually with us all the time. So we feel like Allah is somewhere that is unreachable to us, not knowing that he's right next to us all the time, and at any moment we can reach out to him, and he's here. He's already here. We don't even have to reach out. He already knows he needs to be there with us. So it weakens this connection and our understanding of how to view Allah, not so much as somebody who's sitting up there looking down at us, but as somebody who's this companion that we can have with us in this life, as our friend. Yes, Allah is allowed to be your friend. You are allowed to be Allah's friend. It is such a huge honor to allow it to be Allah's friend. Now, I usually say I am Allah is my best friend. Now, whether or not I'm his best friend, now that is debatable, but he's certainly my best friend. And I'm carrying my best friend with me everywhere I go, because I don't want to have a life without him. And I want you to think of Allah as your best friend as well. But if your idea of Allah and your relationship with Allah is this sort of like distant one, Allah is somewhere way out there, Allah is somewhere I don't even understand where he is because he's so far away, he's in heaven, he's in a different dimension, a different realm, then of course it's also going to feel difficult to create an intimate and deeply connected bond with him. Because how can you create a relationship with someone that's far away from you and who is not on social media? you know what I mean? We can't just send a friend request in that way. So that's another way that it can manifest itself, that it feels like Allah is very far away from you, that you don't have this connection, that he's always with you, which also can present itself as loneliness, deep loneliness. For a lot of Muslims, and I see this, it's a horrible trend really right now, and you can probably also, maybe you've heard of it, or maybe you can recognize it for yourself, that a lot of Muslims are going through a lot of loneliness in this day and age. And I think again it's because our understanding of Allah and our relationship with Allah is quite weak sometimes. It's not built on this deeply personal connection. It's built on this outsourcing of a relationship with Allah, that you know, you can only approach Allah in certain ways and whatever it might be, and through certain traditions and whatever, that Allah feels so distant, and it creates a sense of loneliness, when in reality you're not alone. You've got Allah with you all the time. He's your best friend. He's your provider. He's your everything. He's always with you. You're never alone. And he will always support you, and he will always guide you, and he will always cheer you on. He wants you to succeed. But first of all, you need to recognize that he is there. You need to recognize that he wants all of these things for you, and he can give those to you the more you connect back with him, right? Fear. When you're walking through life with a lot of fear, anxiety, and stress. And I'm not talking about anxiety, by the way, from like the mental health perspective. I'm talking about anxiety and like overthinking, overanalyzing every decision. When your relationship with Allah needs a little bit more work, you may find yourself overthinking a lot of things. You may find yourself dwelling on things that happened in the past, on things that you thought had to be but didn't happen, or you know, are not being. I'm not English. You know what I mean? If they're not here and you thought they should be here, that you might dwell on it. You might feel like Allah is punishing you in this dunya. You might feel like Allah doesn't listen to your du'as. You might, you know, just overthink a lot of things. You might live in this dunya full of hesitation and fear and doubt, when in reality, when the closer you are to Allah and the more that bond between you and Allah is strong, the more you can actually live in your tawakkul, in your trust. You can push aside that fear, and you can take action solely based on your relationship and understanding of Allah. That is what it can do. So if you are spending a lot of your time in fear and in hesitation and in doubt and in overthinking and in anxiety and stress, then that is a sign that you may need to work a little bit more on your relationship with Allah. That even if you feel like I have a really good relationship with Allah, I'm still living in fear and hesitation and these things, then maybe there's an aspect of your relationship with Allah that could do with a little bit more work. It doesn't have to be your whole overall entire relationship. And I haven't said that up until now, and maybe I should have, but you know what, I am a person and I'm full of mistakes and I forget things. But I'm going to tell you now, when I'm talking about building this relationship with Allah, I'm not saying that you have to start from scratch. You may already have a really beautiful, strong relationship with Allah on this aspect and on that aspect, but then there's another aspect of your relationship with Allah that just is struggling and crying out for help, but you haven't recognized yet that also has to do with your relationship with Allah. It is literally everything in your life, my dear. It is everything in your life. The way you live your life, the way you think, the way you act, the things you do, the things you don't do, how you speak, how you conduct yourself, everything comes back to your relationship and understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if there's one aspect of your life that you feel like you're struggling through, maybe that is an area where you need to, instead of thinking about how can I fix it myself, you know, in the physical, practical, like here's my A, B, C, D, and I have to check them off the list, go back to how could this potentially be connected with Allah and my relationship with Allah, and how can I improve it from my foundation so that the cracks don't get bigger, and then I can fix it going through my list. Okay. It's not your fault. Let me just say that real quick as well. If your relationship with Allah is struggling, it's not your fault. This is not a finger pointing thing of like, you're so bad, you're so wrong, you're doing bad. This is just something that we all have to get through at some point or another. We all have to understand how much of personal responsibility we hold in this relationship and connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we understand this for ourselves and we understand how impactful it is on absolutely every aspect of our lives, we can start changing it for the better. So please don't feel like, oh my God, I'm such a bad Muslim, or I'm so bad for not having done this before. You're perfectly safe, my dear. Allah is always waiting. He's so ready to connect with you. But sometimes we just need that push. Okay, my darling, that's what I had for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't forget to share this podcast with people that you know or on your social medias. Reach out to me over on Instagram if you've got any feedback or you just want to say hello. And inshallah, I will see you in tomorrow's episode. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in love.